Greetings, my friends. Welcome back to another story in the life of the old-time rock and roller. When 2001 rolled around, Bob Seger's Old Time Rock and Roll was voted CNN's Song of the Decade. In fact, it was the #2 most played rock and roll song in jukebox history. That one afternoon in Muscle Shoals got me heard by hundreds of millions of people all across the world. And so I figured, hey, I'm starting 2001 as the most often heard unknown guitar player in the world. So welcome back, and here is today's story. Somewhere along the line, Dave Parnell came to do one of the festivals or tours we were doing, and he decided he liked it better in Atlanta. And so I said, well, till you get on your feet and get settled, you can move in here with me. And that was really cool. He spent a couple of months at our house. We had a lot of fun on the porch at night, just his saxophone and my guitar. Well, we had a show in Memphis playing at B.B. King's for the Blues Foundation. And it was sponsored by Jack Daniels. So there were a lot of very happy people there because it was all free Jack Daniels. And we started off our set and it was going fine. And I looked down on the dance floor and I saw my friend Gay Agdabalola from Sapphire, the Uppity Blues Women, dancing with Taj Mahal right in front of the stage. It was a real thrill. The next day, we were booked to play at a stage on the street right outside of the King Biscuit Blues Festival. And we played 2 or 3 sets, I think. It was a lot of fun. And Raymond Victor met a guy who was a DJ friend of mine, Michael Ellis. He did the Friday show at WRFG. And he walked up to the stage and said hi. And he knew Ray was from Chicago. And it turned out they both went to the same junior high school together. Small world. So we finished the date, and Ray and Dave decided they were going to stay at the festival and hang around. I think Ray met some friends who had an RV or so. So me and Jon Schewnke, who now was playing bass, with John McKnight on the drums, they were my full-time East of the Mississippi band. We used to call them quarter ton of rhythm because they were huge guys and just about a quarter ton it seemed between them. So Schewnke, when he was a kid, he worked for a moving company and he got where he could pick up a refrigerator and like carry it out to the van. So, I mean, he was a big guy. And McKnight, big, tall, heavy, muscular, right? So Jon Schewnke had a terrible headache. He said, you got any Advil? And I said, yeah, I do. So I gave him like 3 because he said it was a bad headache. And he said, no, this is a really bad headache. Give me 6. So I gave him 6 Advil, and we're riding up from Arkansas back towards Memphis. And McKnight was drunk, and he kind of shoved Schewnke and poked him again. And Jon said, hey, man, don't do that. I've got a bad headache. And Jon said, okay. And about another half a minute, Jon pushes him again, and that was all Schewnke I could take. And the next thing I know, I feel the van doing this, and the 2 of them are wrestling in the back, you know, I mean, just going at it like mad. Finally, Jon Schewnke got McKnight into a bear hug, like that refrigerator. And he said, are you gonna quit it? And he said, yeah, I'll quit it. He said, no bullshitting, man. You better quit it. And he said, yeah, I'll quit. So he let him up. They went back and he sat down, and Jon Schewnke said, man, my head is killing me. And McKnight shoved him again, and they were back on the floor wrestling, and it was just It was funny as shit. And finally, John had the other John in a headlock. Schewnke said, "Now, you better knock it off." And he said, okay, I'll knock it off. Anyway, so the next morning it was time to drive back to Atlanta. And Ray was out of vodka, and it was Sunday. And we were driving through Alabama, which was a dry area. And yeah, man, he was jonesing. We finally crossed the state line, and he was able to buy a fifth of something, which was about gone by the time we got back to my house. So Ray went back to San Francisco, and I decided to cut the new basics at Dogwood Studio this time, instead of going out to Prairie Sun and Cotati. So I booked a day, and me, Dave Parnell, Jon Schewnke, John McKnight, and Barry Richman, also a fabulous guitar player, my favorite guitar player from Atlanta. His dad was a big band player. Barry is great. We had cut Standing By Myself, I Feel So Good, Who's Been Talking, and others before noon. It was great. We took our lunch break, and I said, let's play a nice slow blues. And Dave said, I got something I can sing to this, and we did Blues in the Basement. And I carried that forward for a number of years. Also, we did Boogie Me Till I Drop and Ode to Billy Joe. It was really, I played just a very hard to describe, less is more vibrato kind of rhythm thing. It was just really neat. We finished up for the day, and I sent a copy of the tape to my friend Bob Margolin. And I said, hey Bob, how would you like to play a solo on the new record? And he said, well, send it to me and I'll see what jumps out at me, if anything. And he called me back up and he said, you know what, I want to play a slide solo on Ode to Billy Joe. And I said, okay, when will you be around this area again? And he said, next Saturday we'll be coming in on I-20 about 2 o'clock because we're playing at Darwin's in Marietta that night. I said, okay, cool. I get a call about 1:30 and he said, okay, we're about 20 minutes out. Meet me right at the bridge at the underpass and I'll walk up at the embankment. So I was there, his van pulled over, he walked up, I was there, and we drove back to the studio. Now by this time, Ron's studio, Ron Benner, Dogwood Studio, had gotten so good. In fact, Ron's engineering talents were so good that he was an engineer at the Olympics. For years, they would call him. And he did many incredible Olympics working in the sound booth. So we were getting a great sound. Bob and I drove in my car back to the studio where Ron was waiting with everything set up. And we sat down and Bob put the cans on and he played a real nice solo. And then I said, man, that's really good. Let's do one more. So we did one more. And then later I combined the 2 tracks and took the best of each one. It was really killer. Let's check out a cut from the record right now. Well, I drove him to the club since he didn't have a ride, and on the way, I fired one up. I said, you want to hit? And he said, no, I shouldn't, no. So I'm driving along and burning it, and he said, man, that sure smells good. He says, I changed my mind, I will have a hit. So I gave him a couple of hits on the way. Well, we went to the club, he sat up, everything was cool. He played the first set, it was dynamite. And then he asked me to come up and play the second set. And I played the whole set with him. And our friend Sweet Betty was there, and she always gets up and does brown liquor in a dirty glass. She's such a good singer. After the show, and I thank Bob for his work, and he wouldn't take any money. He's such an ambassador of the blues. What a great guy. Later, after the record came out, and after that show, my friend Blackjack, Doug Ketchum, the DJ, said, boy, Bob sure was generous with, having you play with him last night, or whenever it was. And I said, yeah, he's a great guy. And then maybe 6 months later, I started thinking, and I thought, you know what? I bet I got him so stoned on the ride that he was like, I need some help here. Forrest, come on up here and play this whole second set with me. So I just thought I'd throw that in, and that was how we got Bob on the record. And we got tremendous compliments and great reviews from the Finger Lickin' Blues CD. And I flew Ray back out to put on the vocals to finish up the record. Well, we had a weekend booked at Ocean City, Maryland. We were opening for the Temptations, and it was a twilight show. So just as we were going on the outside stage, all the lights came up and the ocean was in the background. It was really cool. In fact, I think both Jon Schewnke and John McKnight's fathers drove to the gig to hear their sons play. The next night, we were playing in Delaware, right across the ocean, I guess, at a tiny little exclusive blues club. Now, when Ray played in the Spies in Rhode Island, when he had come out in that brief period back in, like 1979 or something, he was married to a very tall, athletic, thin lady named Gretchen, who did goldsmithing, really, really crafty. And she was a jogger. Well, they had gotten divorced, but Ray said, hey, my ex-wife, Gretchen, works at the real estate office next door. Let's sneak over there and I'll surprise her. Well, in the 20 years that had passed, Ray lost all his hair. He had a big white beard, and his stomach, he was fat. He was big, right? So you wouldn't recognize him from Adam. But I pretty much looked the same. So I said, Ray, let's go over there and let me do the talking, and we'll see if she recognizes you. He said, okay. So we went in, and we saw a blonde-haired girl bent over the copy machine. And he said, that's her. I recognize her ass anywhere. I said, okay. So we walked up, and she got up and turned around. And I said, hi, do you know who we are? She was taken aback for a second. She stopped. She looked at me and she said, now you look familiar. She turned to Ray and she said, you, I've never seen in my life. And Ray said, honey, it's me, Ray. And she said, Ray, I can't believe it. She said, look, I'm dating a guy who works for the FBI. So, don't call me. But I'm going to be in California next month, and when I'm there, I'll call you. So we had a great show that night at that little club. We got very little sleep, and we drove back, returned all the equipment we had rented. Well, we got on the plane, flew back to Atlanta, jumped in the van that was loaded with equipment, and drove to Greenville, South Carolina, where we were headlining the Coca-Cola Riverwalk Festival. They had closed off a 6-lane road and built a stage right in the middle of the road, a huge stage. and it went all the way down to the river. So there were 100 people across, a mile deep. There were 200,000 people in the crowd. That's the biggest crowd I've ever played to. And just incredibly exhilarating. So we showed up, we were dead tired. In fact, because I had run my video camera the night before, I didn't recharge it. And when I set it up to tape the set, there was no juice. The battery just tanked. We did get one picture of the band on stage. So check this out. The first song was a song called Having a Bad Day off the What's It Gonna Take CD. And Raymond starts off on the piano with this very kind of sappy, moody, melodrama kind of music. The crowd was, say, 70 feet from the stage, this 100,000 people. And he finishes this little riff and breaks in.
Woke up this morning with my dick in my hand. I said, Lord have mercy, I'm a lonely man. Whoa, got an hammer, won't you help me please? Send me somebody to end my misery. It's a bad day.
And the crowd surged forward and packed right up in front of the stage. They were like, yes, this is the shit. We are here, let's do this. And it was just a freaking great show. Man, it was cool. We flew back to Atlanta and started all over again after a couple of days of rest. But that Coca-Cola Riverwalk Festival, preceded by opening for the Temptations and then playing at an intimate jazz blues club, it was an incredible weekend. A couple of weeks went by and we had another gig playing at Bayfest in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Sean Costello was a friend of mine from Atlanta. We were both members of the Atlanta Blues Society and we played the same scene and, you know, we hung out. So we played and then he played and we were hanging out and he was dating Levon Helm's daughter at the time. Levon Helm from the band. So he called her up and they talked for a little while and hung up. And I asked him about his time when him and Susan Tedeschi were boyfriend and girlfriend. Well, then we had to go and we went back and we played at some club in Green Bay. And in the afternoon, me and Dave drove out to Lambeau Field. And we went to the parking lot and we went in and saw the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame and, you know, the Lombardi Trophy and all this stuff. So that was pretty cool. But when we first got there, we rented a car from Madison and drove to Milwaukee. We pulled over to get some gas, and it was like a hamburger stand. But they had other things for sale too. So when Ray and John came out, they each had, John McKnight had a fifth of Jägermeister, and Ray had a fifth of vodka. What I didn't know was they had bought these little firecracker things. When we were kids, they were little like black pellets at poppers, and you'd throw them and they'd hit the ground and they'd explode. Well, each of them were bald. And I'm driving along and I think, you know, maybe smoking a bowl or something, and all of a sudden I hear these pop, 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 and they're throwing them at each other's heads and exploding them off their heads. I said, wow, what a hamburger stand. You come out with booze and firecrackers and food and wow. Anyway, that was the drive on up to Green Bay. That was pretty fun weekend. By the way, one of my subscribers asked me about this ring. I could make this a multiple choice answer. I was backpacking through Tibet and I came upon some monks to do some kung fu training. And after the end of the training, it was the Sacred Order of the Eagle. And they had this ring made for me. That's answer number one. Answer number two is there was a nature club that was just rare exotic birds. And whatever your favorite bird is, then you could pick out a ring for that bird. And the third answer is I was playing in Vegas. I went to Rick Harrelson's pawn shop on the Pawn TV show. I walked in and was looking around, and I saw it in the cabinet. And the guy said, "This is a one of a kind. This artist from Europe, he's only made 200 of these, and this is it." And I bought it. So which one do you think it is, A, B, or C? Well, of course, it was C. So I hope I answered your question there. So the year went on, and I started hosting the Tuesday night blues jam at Darwin's, me and Dave, with Jon and Jon. And one year they asked, "Hey, do you mind if we skip this gig? We can get you some substitutes because Delta Moon is playing at Blind Willie's and they're going to give us $100 a piece to play that night." And I said, "Sure, go ahead and do that." Well, they entered the Atlanta Blues Society Blues Challenge, and they went to Memphis and they won the challenge. So that was really cool. So that was, quarter ton of rhythm right there. Okay. Everything was going well, and we were booked to play at the Mammoth Bluesapalooza Festival. This was a big, big show. Curtis Saldgado was on the show, a lot of other people. So we went up and we were on the plane, actually, and we were flying almost over Colorado. And now every time we had to go somewhere, I'd drive up to pick Dave up, and it'd always be out on the corner with his suitcase, his saxophone, his hat, sitting on the curb, ready to go. So this was no different, except a couple of weeks before, Dave had a mild heart attack, and he went to Crawford Long Hospital. They put a stent in. He rested up, got better, everything was fine. So here we are, booked at Bluesapalooza, the Mammoth Mountain Beer Tasting Fest, 3 days of music, really great. And we're flying over Colorado. So Dave had a seat across the aisle from me. He got up, he walked with his cane, went up to the restroom, and he came back, and he got halfway to the chair, and he dropped. He had a heart attack. Fortunately, there was a doctor on the plane, and they had a defibrillator, and they got his heart started. They made an emergency landing at the Denver airport. Ambulance came and took Dave away. So while we were there, I made a call to Ray and I said, "Hey man, Dave had a heart attack. You got to come up with a horn player." So he found a horn player, and we did the festival, and it was really great. Now, while we were there, I met a beautiful woman who was an aide to a senator in California. And we kind of hung out through the day and into the night, kind of lying on a hay bank, looking up at the stars and just feeling wonderful. We didn't have sex or anything like that, but it was really a lot of fun. Well, I flew back to Atlanta with Dave's horn, put it in the house, and just kind of waited there for word to see what was going to happen. Well, he got out of the hospital and he took a bus back to Vallejo. And he was there for about 3 months, got back into old habits, and was taken to the emergency room, and He was on life support, and after a couple of days, he passed away. So, God rest his soul, Dave Parnell. Love you, brother. Well, now I had a new problem because I needed another soloist in the band. One of our classic trademarks was the fact that I could take a solo, and then Dave would take a solo, and Ray could take a solo, and then would come back into the song. It was very versatile and worked really well for us. Well, I didn't want to go get a horn player. I just felt, I need somebody else. I just didn't feel right about that. Well, there was a guy named Andrew Black who I had seen play with the Barry Richman band about 2 years before. And I called Andrew and I told him the circumstance, and he came over and we talked, and he said, man, I'm impressed by your organization and your record label and all the things you've done, and sure, of course I'll do it. And I remember the very first night we played anything together, and he showed up at Darwin's on a Tuesday night. I said, what do you want to do? He says, let's start with Every Day I Have the Blues. Ain't nothing but a thing. Let's do this. So we jumped right into it, and man, it was great. Sounded really, really super. Well, John McKnight and Jon Schewnke were now playing full-time with Delta Moon. So we got a new drummer named Larry Duff, who was just awesome, and Steve Mays, who had played with Deborah Coleman. And that band smoked, man. We were playing all around, having a really good time. In August, I got a call from an independent filmmaker, a guy named Gil Baker, who was doing a documentary on all of the great session players, like the Detroit players and the Memphis Stax players and the LA players and the New York scene and Muscle Shoals. And he said, you're the last interview I want to do for the movie. And I want to know about your story with Bob Seger and the Muscle Shoals Swampers and recording on old time rock and roll. He said, maybe September we can do it. I said, okay, great. Well, 9/11 came, and his office and all of his stuff was, I don't know what happened, but it was a bad time, and I didn't get the segment in the movie. But the Swampers and somebody put it out there on YouTube, so that was pretty cool. 2 weeks after 9/11, we were booked to play our first show with Andrew Black. I decided to book us back in the fall at Ocean City to their end of the summer blowout. And we were the headliner. Well, I didn't know it, but when I booked the tickets, I booked it as Andrew Black. And we got to the airport, and they said, can I see some identification? And it says, Andrew Freund, which was Andrew's real name. And I said, oh, and they were very uptight because they weren't going to let him on the plane. He said, that's my stage name. I said, well, how can you prove it? He says, I've got a poster in the car. Let me run out to the parking lot. And he ran out to the Atlanta parking lot and came in with a big Andrew Black and the Believers poster, and he showed them, and they let that pass as ID. So when we got to Baltimore, we had to take a little connector. And everybody that got off the plane, they ushered them to a table. There were actually 2 tables with a tablecloth on it. And I realized they were searching everybody. They were looking in people's, collars and fingernails, looking for anything explosive, anything, because it was just 9/11. I had a bag of in my sock. I said, holy shit. I'm, in my pipe in my little suitcase. I am screwed. So I just made a split-second decision. I grabbed my suitcase, I left the line and headed for the men's room. And the guy said, Sir, you're not allowed to leave the line once you're in the line. You cannot leave the line. I gotta go. And I ran in and I went to the bathroom and tossed everything and then came back to the line and, he searched everything, my fingernails, my tonsils, everything. And I was clean. So, man, I would tell you what, the times they were a-changing. That was one thing for sure. But that was the only mishap on that particular flight. We're lucky Andrew got on the plane, I'm telling you. We drove down there. We played a great gig. And we're back at the hotel. So I'm tired. And it was a heck of a ride down, I think. And I went to bed. Well, maybe a half an hour went by, and I had just fallen asleep, and the phone rings. And it's McKnight, and he says, Hey, Forrest. I said, Yeah. He said, Is Ray in there? I said, No, man. I'm going to bed. Great. So maybe 5 minutes went by. Just falling back asleep. The phone rings. It's Ray. He says, Hey, is McKnight in there? I said, No, he's not in here. And I slammed the phone down. About 8 minutes went by. I'm just like this. The phone rings again. And it's McKnight. And he goes, Hey, is Ray there? And I can hear Ray laughing in the background. I said, You son of a... I slammed the phone down and walked over to their room and opened the door. I said, You fucking guys, I'm trying to sleep. Knock it off. Don't call me anymore. So they didn't, but it was fun. It was funny. I mean, anybody tells you there's not good times out on the road, there are. McKnight was the funniest joke teller alive. I mean, he had so many shticks he could do, and he kept us laughing and laughing and laughing. My favorite blues club in Atlanta was a place called Darwin's in Marietta, run by Kay Roweder. Kay was a beautiful lady, still is. She eventually sold the club, but we had many great nights playing in there. One night we were playing, I just got in from Texas. I was in the solo and the whole club was hanging on every note. And I finally got to the crescendo in the end. And the whole place exploded. Everybody jumped to their feet, screaming. It was an incredible feeling. Well, Walter Trout had been coming in and out of Atlanta doing some special shows. And he was playing out at Darwin's. I had the night off and I wanted to go meet him. And his drummer, Joey Pafuma, I knew from the incredible two-man band back in New England in the 80s. So I had talked to Joey and we had a good time. But there's like a meet and greet line in between where Walter was. So there's one lady talking to him, there's a lady in front of me, and then there I am. Well, the Finger Licking Blues CD, which was the new record, number 3 in a row, had come out. We had tons of airplay and great reviews. Everybody in Atlanta heard it every week. Somebody came up to me in the line and said, Oh, Forrest, can you sign this for me? And they had a copy of one of my records. Well, the lady was just about to talk to Walter Trout, and she spun around and said, Oh, are you Forrest McDonald? I said, Yeah. She said, Oh, I love your music. It's just incredible, and your new record is unbelievable. Meanwhile, here's Walter Trout, so I felt bad for him for a second. She spun around and finished talking to him, and then I talked to him. My friend Tony Carey had produced John Mayall when Walter and Coco Montoya were both in the band. And this was in Europe, many years before. And I told Walter that Tony said to say hi, and we reminisced on some of the stories that Tony had told me about them being on the road with John Mayall. He said Jon had a trunk of VHS tapes, and every night after the gig, it was movie night. The only thing that Jon would eat was fried chicken, but he was a heck of a drinker. And one night, his balcony was over the pool, and he had a few too many, and he decided he was going to dive off into the pool. I don't know if the pool was empty or it was the shallow end or what, but he messed himself up something terrible. Back to Darwin's, Walter put on a great show that night. It was wonderful to meet him, and that was a really good time. Now, at the same time, I got notified that our second CD, What's It Gonna Take, was nominated by the Just Plain Folks Music Organization for Blues Song of the Year. Work, Work was up for that. It was a song Raymond wrote. We had won Blues CD of the Year with Spirit of the Blues the previous year. So chances are we're looking good that we might win again. When I was called and told who the 5 finalists were. Gatemouth Brown was one of them. Gatemouth is unbelievable. He was a friend of my Uncle Jim's from Texas. They went to high school together. Work, Work beat out Gatemouth Brown and won Blues Song of the Year by the Just Plain Folks Music Awards. At the same time, Real Blues Magazine voted us the best Southern rock band for 1999, 2000, and 2001. Things were coming together like a freaking avalanche. In August, I got a call from an independent filmmaker, a guy named Gil Baker, who was doing a documentary on all of the great session players, like the Detroit players and the Memphis Stax players and the LA players and the New York scene and Muscle Shoals. And he said, "You're the last interview I want to do for the movie. And I want to know about your story with Bob Seger and the Muscle Shoals Swampers and recording on old time rock and roll." He said, "Maybe September we can do it." I said, "Okay, great." Well, 9/11 came. I don't know what happened, but it was a bad time, and I didn't get the segment in the movie. But the Swampers and somebody put it out there on YouTube, so that was pretty cool. Now, I wanted to mention, I had this side project going called the Voodoo Screamers with my friend Lawrence Proman, the poet. We decided to cut 4 tracks down at Dogwood, and we met Schewnke and McKnight to go record the tracks. We did this one song called Billy Satan, which was really like early heavy metal. I mean, it was just like from Mars. Well, on a Tuesday night, like the week after we cut it, Lawrence came into the club and was sitting there at the bar. And it was the Tuesday night jam session. Anybody who signed up could come up and would back him up. So Lawrence got up and he said, "Listen, I want to do a song. It's not quite blues, but maybe you guys can follow me." And we said, "Okay." And we knew perfectly well that it was going to be this metal song, Billy Satan. And we had been playing all of this cool blues all day. And we launched in ba-dum, ba-dum, da-dum. When he finished, the place, you could hear a pin drop. Then he got off the stage, and it was pretty funny. Billy Satan, I just want to let you know, it is up on my YouTube channel. So you can find it, and you can listen to it, and you'll go, "Oh my God, you played this at a blues jam?" But you'll at least get to hear the full effect of how shocking it was to the club and all of the people in it. It was a joke. It was funny. So we played another set, and this beautiful blonde showed up with a Playboy-type bunny body. And she said to me, "You want to go get high?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, sure." And so me and Lawrence and this girl walked back in the parking lot, and we smoked one, and then Lawrence went back inside. Well, the girl ripped her top open. She was like, ah! So the next thing you know, she's on the hood of the car, and we're going at it. I saw Jon Schewnke, like off in the distance, because the break was just about over. And he was walking into the club, and he looked over and he saw me on the hood of this car. And I knew it was time to go in. So I ran back in and got up on the stage, and Jon said, hey, you're looking a little flushed, Forrest. Everything okay? Anyway, these are the zany things that go on in the crazy world of the old-time rock and roller. We were booked to play the Vallejo Festival. Let's check out a cut.
Like the world keep turning, my life is spinning around. Like the world keep turning, my life is upside down. I've got the blues, but it's not get me down. I said, yeah, 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 yeah. It's my baby, it's my baby. Yeah, 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 yeah. Hey, life is tough, it ain't gonna get me down. Now the joint was jumping and somebody had a dial. Raymond made a duck down through the brown lookout. Here she comes, I think she's made of you. Down there dancing with everybody else but me. Down there dancing with everybody else but me. That life is tough and it ain't that hard to see. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's my baby, it's my baby. Somebody holler down, baby, baby, duck down to the bound. Look out, here she comes. I think she's made of you. She got you know me, time is bad too. She's down there dancing with everybody else but me. She's down there dancing with everybody else but me. Yeah, she got me down, but let that place see.
was a really big gig. And I wanted to cut a few more songs for the record before we released it. So Ray got a harmonica player. He and Diane and I and Cap cut maybe 1 or 2 extra songs. The year was ending on a high note. The reviews were great. The band was smoking. We did lose Brother Dave, but we had picked up a great talent in Andrew Black.
How about we get some hands clapping in here, y'all? All right. On the telephone, told me not to worry, cause the baby's coming home. I said, I feel so good. I said, I feel so good. I said, well, I'm so glad, baby, yeah. I won't be lonely no more. Well, I used to be alone, yeah, my life was in misery. It makes me feel so good to know that you're still in love with me. I said, I feel so good. I said, I feel so good. Well, I'm so glad, baby, yeah. I won't be lonely no more. Forrest on the guitar, y'all. I said I feel so good. I said I feel so good. Baby said I'm so glad, Lord. Hey, I won't be lonely no more, no more. I said I feel so good. I said I feel so good. Y'all help me out. Till I try, just like that.
really looking good for the future. So this is 2001 Finger Lickin' Blues. And my friend Doug Ketchum Blackjack came out again and took the cover picture, and we had an artist line them up with my hands playing the guitar and Ray's on the keyboard. So that's it for now, my friends. I hope you enjoyed riding on the blues train with me, because I love telling these stories for you. I'll see you down the story highway, but in the meantime, if you'd hit like, ring the bell, subscribe, it would mean a lot to me. So keep the love in your heart and the song in your head, and I'll see you down the story highway on the next adventure. So long, my friends.